very, how should I say, very sensitive to the environment, and she goes to expeditions to various old ancient temples and religious spaces in India, and she does very interesting things there. Surbi, maybe you can share some light on what you do. Surbi, we can't hear you.
We can't hear your audio. Surbiji, we can't hear you.
Still is muted. I hope Vinita ji, it's not from your side.
No. I think it's from her side. I'll just tell the IT. Check.
In the meantime, I think, just tell them and then we can start off our meeting.
सुरभि जी का ऑडियो नहीं आ रहा है. चेक करें प्लीज.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, fantastic. We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you now. So we shall start our program for the day. Very good afternoon to all our eminent speaker, Shri Jigme Takpaji, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Mr. Saket Dalmia, Senior Vice President, PHDCCI. Ms. Surabhi Gupta, Chair, YBLF. Mr. Manish Tapkara, Managing Director, Enking International. Ms. Aparna Roy, she'll be joining us in a while. She's the Research Lead, Climate Change and Energy, ORF. Mr. Varun Pava, President, TRI. So I request Surabhi ji to please give her opening remarks and start off the program. Over to you, Surabhi.
Thank you. Namaste, everyone. Shri Jigme Takpaji, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Shri Sanjay Kumar Ojha ji, Joint CEO, National Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority, Ministry of Environment. Mr. Saket Dalmia ji, Senior Vice President of PhD Chamber. Mr. Tushar Agarwal, Co-Chair, YBLF. Mr. Harsh, Co-Chair, YBLF. Mr. Manish Tapkara, Managing Director, Enking International. Mr. Naveen Mathur, Director, Sales, Enking International. Ms. Aparna Roy, Research Lead, Climate Change and Energy, ORF. Mr. Varun Pava, President of the Pava Group. Mr. Vivek Sehgal, I believe he's not there today. Vinita ji is representing him. Friends and colleagues from the industry. Young Business Leaders Forum is an integral part of the PhD Chamber, and we are privileged to have an eminent panel of speakers here with us today. As you know, that YBLF addresses the issues of young leaders and focuses on their development as future business leaders. The forum works effectively in promoting business networking and leadership skills. And we organize programs like these, which we are that we are doing today, for mentoring and developing business leaders who can contribute towards our nation building. We have in recent past organized very interesting sessions which are related to business continuity, family business management, business growth, leadership and management, along with industry tours and networking meets. Coming to this topic, as the current pandemic sets the new vision of global action towards an inclusive and sustainable world, the success of organizations depend on their approach to sustainability. In particularly, how they localize and integrate practices across sustainable business models, ESG indicators, climate finance, and environmental offsets. Corporate executives, policymakers, academicians, and practitioners have embarked on activities to integrate sustainability into corporate and policy agendas. A major problem confronting these actors is a lack of knowledge about the application of principles and how to integrate these principles in an impactful way. I hope that after this discussion, our attendees will have the opportunity to play an active role in the area of sustainability. I will conclude my remarks here and invite Mr. Saket Dalmia ji, our Vice President, to take over.
Thank you, Surabhi ji. So once again, very warm welcome. Namaste, sir. Jigme Tapkaji, for taking out some time from your valuable and busy schedule for being with us here, and everybody else whom Surbhiji has addressed. For the benefit of the caucus, I do not want to take more time. All I would like to repeat is what I shared just a while ago, that going forward, I think living in India, we are all aware how important it is to maintain and preserve our environment and our climate and our forests. We are a developing nation with very little having been done in terms of commercial exploitation of our natural resources, and yet our urban cities are becoming hellholes to live in. So obviously a lot of planning, a lot of thought process in terms of sustainability of our lives, and more importantly to preserve. I think a combination of these three are critical going ahead. Since most of the people who are going to be largely affected are going to be the young and the youth, because sustainability also means continuity. So we must preserve our planet and our immediate surroundings. I think we'll all agree with that idea in mind. And having said that, I look forward to listening to the esteemed ministries, Joint Secretary Saab, more than my own thoughts. So over to Vinita ji. Vinita ji, please hand over the baton to the next speaker. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here with us again.
Thank you so much, Saketji, for setting up the tone for the program. We are very thankful for Jigme Tapkaji to take out time from his busy schedule, and we are not further delaying. He has got few more meetings after this program. So over to you, sir, for your address to the program.
Thank you, Madam Vinita Mehra. It is a big privilege and honor for me to be invited today. I'd like to thank Mr. Saket Dalmia, Senior Vice President of PhD Chambers of Commerce India, Shri Dr. J.P. Gupta, Chair the Environment Committee, PhD CCI, and my colleague Sanjay Kumar Oja, and Mr. Manish Dabkara, Managing Director, EI, and Mrs. Arpana Roy, Research Lead, Climate Change and Energy, ORF, and Mr. Varun Pava, President, DRI Power Group. Thank you, everybody, and especially I would like to, on the outset, I would like to thank especially the PhD Chamber of Commerce for hosting this webinar on building sustainable solution for future and role and challenges for the generation next. I think this topic is most appropriate at a time when the whole world is recovering from pandemic of COVID-19, which started in last year in 2020, and 2021 is very crucial year for India and for the global community. And given the uncertainty associated with COVID-19, a collective global action is pressing need of the hour. For a developing country like India, the impact of COVID-19 are more severe than the global financial crisis that happened in 1990s and in 2007 and 8. Coming to India, India accounts for only 4% of the world geographical area and hosts more than 18% of the world population and 17% population of the cattle population, whereas we have only 4% of the world water resources, that too largely temporal and with spatial variability. So you can well imagine the quantum of the pressure on the natural resources in India. There's a startling publication and report of the United Nations, which came just a few months back, and in last year there were two main reports. One is the sixth cycle, the first report of IPCC sixth cycle, which has been very startling and which has awakened and shaken the whole world. That the main findings in the report of the IPCC sixth cycle, it says that the average temperature of the Earth will cross 1.5 degree over the pre-industrial level in next 20 years, say by 2040, and by 20 degree by middle of the century, with sharp reduction, without sharp reduction of emission. So this is for the first time that IPCC has said that 1.5 degree warming is inevitable, even in the best case scenario. So last decade was hotter than any period of time in the last 125,000 years. And global surface temperature was 1.09 degree higher than the decade 2011 to 20, than between 1850 to 1900. Coming to the carbon dioxide, the concentration was the highest in at least 2 million years. Human being has emitted more than 2,400 billion tons of carbon since 1800. Most of this can be attributed to human activities, particularly burning of fossil fuel. The effect of human activity has also warmed the climate at a rate unprecedented in 2000 years, and world has already depleted 86% of the available carbon budget. So the whole politics, whole issue of climate change negotiation, the net zero carbon emission, all the things that politics that going around, which will be held in the Glasgow, is to how to capture the 14% of the available carbon budget. And another very important report that has come was a IPCC report, that is Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, that is IPBES, recently released the report. And the main highlight of the report says that the health of ecosystem that human and other species depend is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. As many as 1 million different species are facing the threat of extinction, more than any previous time. This is out of the total estimated 8 million plants and animal species. The current rate of species extinction is about 10 to 100 times higher than the compared average over the last 10 million years. And 75% of the land surface and 66% of the marine environment has been significantly altered. Over 85% of the wetland has been completely lost. The negative trend in nature is expected to continue to 2050 and beyond in all the policy scenario explored in the assessment report. There are other reports which tell that top global 100 environmental externalities are costing the economy worldwide around 4.7 trillion a year in terms of air pollution, related health care cost, climate change, and loss of natural resources. Fossil fuel subsidy globally are in the range of 500 to 800 billion $100 a year, whereas renewable energy attracts only subsidies of the 100 billion, almost 1/5 to 1/8 of the what is we give for the fossil fuel subsidies. And as the global economy are subsidizing other forms of destructive and degradation form of subsidy in for the excessive chemical input, in agriculture to around 27 billion worth of subsidies. Free electricity has led to the depletion of groundwater in India and inundation and waterlogging and salination and degradation of agricultural land in the most fertile land of agricultural land of India, especially the Gangetic Plains. And at the same time, it has poisoned the whole agricultural field and agricultural product because of excessive use of fertilizer and pesticide and weedicides. Each year, 16 million hectares of forest are destroyed. The majority of forests occur in tropical forest and old growth forest. Worldwide, 300 to 500 million tons of hazardous waste are produced each year, with industrialized countries responsible for 80 to 90%. And this planet aids 77 million people each year. Rainforests are destroyed at a rate of 60,000 square kilometers per year. Half of the earth wood cover has disappeared since 1950. Now we are left with the 20% of the earth's surface for growing food and other crops that we need for our ever increasing population. Unfortunately, nature was regarded to be conquered, to be exploited, and to be overcome whenever possible. It was imagined that natural resources are inexhaustible. UNEP Green Economy Report highlights any profit come at a cost of environment degradation. If we act now and prevent the impact of growing as urbanization burgeonism and to support population heading to 9 billion. Instead, we can encourage the sector to support the global transition to an inclusive and green economy. There is a big opportunity for public-private cooperation to develop ambitious policy and strategies that delivers many other sustainable development goals. As we are creating a healthy, sustainable community, decent work and economic growth, the sector could transform issues like the poverty, equality and justice. Sharing the best practices, knowledge and experience from one place, we can broaden and accelerate action on many other fronts while fostering innovation, developing integrated solutions and expanding workforce capability at the same time. In other words, with the right policy, the right market condition, the right stimulus for changing and investment, the sustainable goal can serve as a catalyst for a perfect cycle of benefits. That means sustainable growth and more skilled workforce, social and economic and environmental gains for the country. Time is ripe for implementation of nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches to protect, sustainably manage and restore natural and modified ecosystem in the way that addresses societal challenges effectively and adaptively to provide human being and the biodiversity benefits. They are underpinned by a benefit that flows from a healthy ecosystem and target major challenges like climate change, disaster risk reduction, food and water security, health and critical health, and that are very critical to economic development. Nature-based solution uses tools that nature already provides to address issues like resulting from poor land and resource use, climate change, societal challenges, and solution often enhance the existing natural and man-made infrastructure and spur long-term economic, social, and environmental benefit. United Nations Environment Program launched a Green Economy Initiative, GEI, in 2008. It consisted of the global research and country-level assistance, encouraging policymakers to support environmental investment within the context of sustainable development. UN Environment has developed a working definition for the green economy as one that results in improved human well-being, social equity, while significantly reducing environmental risk and ecological scarcities. Over the past decade, the concept of green economy has emerged as a strategic priority for many government and intergovernmental organizations. By transforming their economies into drivers of sustainability, they will be primed to take on major challenges of the 21st century, from urbanization, resource scarcity, to climate change and economic viability. As an inclusive green economy has evolved from the earlier work of green economy, it is simplest expression such as economy is low carbon, efficient, clean in production, but also inclusive in consumption and outcomes, based on sharing, circularity, collaboration, solidarity, resilience, opportunity, and interdependence. It is focused on expanding options and choice for national economies using targeted and appropriate fiscal and social protection policies, and backed up by strong institutions that are specifically geared to safeguard social and ecological flows. It recognizes that there are many diverse paths to environmental sustainability. The approach speaks to multiple benefits like economic, health, security, social, and environmental that such an approach can bring to nation mindful of different challenges faced by a state along the development continuum, be they developed, developing, emerging, or in conflict state. It argues for policies that are nuanced, context dependent, and modulated. An integrated approach can help the state to understand how to maximize, prioritize, sequence the different benefit to human well-being that can derive from the healthy environment. At the end of the day, an inclusive green economy must provide not only jobs and income, but for the health of our environment and our future. This is our common challenge, that is creating a condition for enhanced prosperity and growing social equity within the contours of a finite and fragile planet. An inclusive green economy is alternative to today's dominant economic model, which generate widespread environmental and health risk, encourages wasteful consumption, and generate widespread environmental and health risk, and encourages wasteful consumption and production, and drives ecological and social scarcities and result in inequality. Now it is an opportunity, what I find, to advance both sustainability and social equity as a function of a stable and prosperous financial system within the contours of a finite and fragile planet. It is a pathway to achieving 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, eradicating poverty while safeguarding the ecological threshold, which underpins human health, human well-being, and development. The decade the present decade from 2021 to 2030 is very, very special. From various point of view, the world has emerged in a resilient manner from the COVID pandemic. At the same time, we are looking forward for multilateral agreement, which means the hope for better future. That is UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, UN Convention on Biodiversity, which will be held in Kunming. We look forward to the post-2020 biodiversity framework, which will be framed after the UN CBD COP in Kunming in China. Second is the UN FCC COP16 on climate change in Glasgow to tackle the climate issues and climate resilience and adaptability. And third is UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, and that is being headed by UN Environment Program and World Food Agriculture Organization. And the fourth one is the Sustainable Development Goal, which started in 2015, and by 2030 we are going to we aim to attain all the development goals, and the goals therein to end hungers, poverty, dependence on the biodiversity and natural capital. To achieve the sustainable development goal, we need natural capital, and natural capital stock that is 100% greater than what we already have. So we hold the future of billions of people, survival of species, future of economies, business that could be sustained and prospered. We must reform our economies so that become efficient and circular, so that we do not keep exploiting and exhausting our natural resources out of the ground at a rate that cannot be sustained. We must act on the right to the healthy environment endorsed by the UN Human Rights Council. In particular, we need to protect the right of the indigenous people and local communities. To do all this, what we required a political will. We need a culture. We require a resources and capacities to deliver and show real transparency and accountability on national and international commitment. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow, sir, what a nice and comprehensive speech, giving us a 360 view. Thank you so much for that. Fantastic. Amazing. Really enlightening. Thank you, sir. What do you believe that is?
Thank you so much, sir. If we have time, should we also take the question?
Yeah.
Because sir has to leave. Are there any questions from the participants for sir? Silvaji, you would like to ask Jigme Takpaji? Since we are, as a YPLF, we also need to align with many visions, and we are also working towards this sustainability and how we as a YPLF can move forward.
So I would like to understand that how at individual level, when I mean like individually as a young Indian, and also as somebody who runs their own industry or a company, at what levels they can intervene to create a much more sustainable and greener planet.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, the industry, business, or anything that we have in our daily life, whether you are a government officer or you're having your own business or industry, everybody depends on the natural resources. All the natural resources in terms of for your industry, as well as resources for your own sustenance, your food, your water, your air. This all comes from the environment. So these are our natural capital. So if natural capital are well stocked, is very healthy, all the environmental services will be healthy, and that keeps you healthy. the goal of every individual is to have a healthy body, healthy mind, and happier, life. So the environment has to be healthy. Therefore, all the food, your resources that you are getting is healthy. One thing. Secondly, that the nature by itself is very, very resilient. It is able to produce and replicate and stock all the resources that we required. So as a businessman, and most of people are from industrialists, whatever resources that is required, it is made by the nature. So if you deplete the resources at a rate higher than that nature can make, so at one point of time, it's going to get exhausted. Now, earlier, this system was that, linear economy in which whatever you produce, you use and you build and manufacture and use. After that, it is thrown, So that kind of a economy is, is not sustaining in the sense that unless you design the product in such a way that it could be reused at one point of time. It could be recycled. The circular economy is the now norms everywhere, so that whatever resources that you are using, it comes back and can be reused and redesigned and used in a circular fashion. So that kind of that brings your efficiency in your system, and that is more cost effective also, and more beneficial and more profitable also, and that is sustainable. Sustainability is nothing but, that without an external input, you are able to keep on for your business or your resources for a long time without getting completely exhausted. So that is the main issue about sustainability.
So I understand that the residue that is produced in the industry is also in some way, it's a circular economy when you say it. The residue is also utilized in some manner or the other.
Yeah, there's nothing called waste. Actually, we say waste. No, there's nothing called waste. Every product is a resource for raw material for others. Because when we use waste, it is already concentrated with many minerals or many products. We can separate it and design it in such a way that it can be reused. The water is reused, after treating. We can use as good as just pure water. Similarly, all the the construction and building construction waste, that can be reused again for construction. You can separate the cement, you can separate the gravels, you can separate sand, you can separate the bricks, and that can be reused again. And so therefore, you don't need to throw away. You may need to throw away, that could be very small quantity rather than throwing everything. So that could be reused again and again under the circular economy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for enlightening us.
You know it actually, most of the things.
Vinita ji.
So, with this, are there any other questions? Let me thank you, Jigme Takpaji, for his valuable remarks and giving us, the kind of inputs and a vision for us that an inclusive green economy is the alternative to dominant economic world, and the circular economy, how we can, nothing is a waste, and how everything can be reutilized as and recycled. So this is what we'd like to. We'd like to thank you, sir, for your valuable time and giving us be with us for this evening. Thank you so much, sir. We would like to invite our next speaker for the day, Mr. Manish Katkara. He would be speaking on carbon markets and expectations from COP26. Manish, if you can hear me. Hello? Just a second, there is an issue. We'll go to our next speaker, Varun Pavaji, while we sort out the technical issues. We are not getting the video of Mr. Manish Katkara. Varunji, can we start with your presentation first?
Sure, we can do that. I would just request presentations share, or would you be
Yes,
able to?
I will do that. Give me 1 second. Anjali ji, we can't see Anish ji on the line. IT team, if you could enable Mr. Manish Taptara to be the speaker, he's in the attendees list. IT team could make him the speaker rights. Actually, he had earlier joined, but somehow slipped onto the attendee list. Really sorry for the glitches. Give me 130 seconds. Manishi, can you hear us now?
Yes, yes. Now it's working.
So, Varunji, since Manishi also has few more meetings, we can go by the flow as we had decided. So,
Sure.
we'll start with Manishi and then come to you. And
That is perfectly fine.
thank you so much. Thank you. So
I request to allow me to share my screen so that I can cover the presentation.
yes,
of
we'll
my-
give you the sharing rights.
Yes, yes, please.
While we get the rights for sharing, you can start with your introduction and the company's introduction. If there's any video that you would like to play for the company.
Just a minute. It had just started.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, so good afternoon all. This is Manish Dutta from Enking International. Enking International is one of the world's largest carbon credit project developer and supplier of the carbon credits to the developed nations. Our brand name is Enking International, while our company name is EKI Energy Services Limited. We are listed at BAC, Bombay Stock Exchange, which makes us only company in the world which had got listed over the stock exchange in our domain related to the carbon credits, carbon offsets. Now we do have 2,000 plus clients, 150 plus people, 100 plus vendors at 40 plus nations, and growth story of 12 plus years. In India, we do have market share of around 90 years. 90%, while in the international carbon markets, we do have market share of 30% in the segment of renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. So these are a few of our clients, like including government organizations, private organizations, international organizations like World Bank, International Monetary Fund, iBird, SCARTEC, and in the national domestic the client list, we do have Indore Municipal Corporation, for whom Indore Municipal Corporation is the first organization corporation in Asia specifically, which had earned carbon credit revenue from sale of carbon credits from their biomethanation projects. Then NHPC is there, NTPC is there, IOCL, Azure Power, SoftBank, and many different organizations are in India. So these are a few of our services. So just come over the main topic related to COP26 and the carbon markets. So as you already know, and the sir, Joint Secretary sir also covered what is global warming. So global warming is, I'm just covering the basics of the carbon markets and the global warming, so that all the participants will remain on the same page, because after that it will be very easy for them to understand what is Paris Agreement and what is COP26 will do bring for the world or in the international carbon market. So as you already know, like the global warming is a problem which had been created because of the increasing concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere because of the high industrialization. Earlier, it had been done by the developed nations, and now developing nations like India and China, they are also contributing in the similar manner whatever the developed nations had done in the past. So as more and more greenhouse gases are getting added in the atmosphere, and the temperature of our Earth is getting increased. So till date, it's 1 degree centigrade already been increased, and because of the high concentration of these greenhouse gases, the global warming issue is coming, and because of the global warming, climate change issue is coming. So as you see, the sea level rise. Sea level is rising, more diseases are coming, the crop patterns is changing, somewhere more drought is there, so similar, many natural calamities are coming, like wild forest fire is the problem, which is the high frequency of the forest fires are which is a gift, you can say, from the global warming that we are facing. So this is the situation as of now. Now comes over the carbon credit. So whatever the nations or the industries, you can say, which are not able to meet the emission reduction target, they are allowed to meet the targets with the help of carbon credits. Earlier, under the Kyoto Protocol, it was allowed to buy and sell carbon credits in the international carbon market. So during India, as India comes under the developing nation and Kyoto Protocol, no developing nations were obligated to reduce the emissions. But now in the Paris Agreement, all nations are obligated to reduce emissions, and if not to reduce, they can buy carbon credits or carbon offsets from other nations or from other industries within the country or internationally. It depends on the rules, regulations, or the treaties which are about to get shape and size after COP26. So as you already know, like what is carbon credit? It's a 1 ton CO2 emission reduction from the atmosphere. So whatever activity you do, for example, installation of renewable energy or doing energy efficiency projects or installation of biomethanation projects at the city level, for example, what Indore Municipal Corporation or Smart City had done, putting mass transportation system like Delhi Metro or Mumbai Metro. So all such kind of projects are eligible to earn carbon credit revenues. So carbon, if you do any which helps this 7 greenhouse gases to get reduced or to get mitigated, you are eligible to earn carbon credit. So these are all the 7 gases. One is carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide. So carbon dioxide comes from combustion of the fossil fuels. Methane comes from decomposition of organic material. Nitrous oxide used to come generally from use of fertilizers, or many other applications are there. HFC, PFC comes from the refrigerant. These are the refrigeration gases. Then after SF6 is majorly utilized for circuit breakers in the electrical circuit system. And the similar way, the nitrous trifluoride is there. So whatever activity if you do, and if you are helping to reduce, either mitigate or absorb these 7 greenhouse gases, one 1 ton, if you do any reduction, then you are eligible to earn 1 carbon credit, which is an environmental commodity and it's tradable in the international carbon markets. So our industry, climate change industry or carbon credit industry had got started during year 1997 from Kyoto, Japan, and that's why this treaty or international protocol, we call it as a Kyoto Protocol. So it had been adopted in Kyoto, Japan on during December 1997, and which it had came into the force during 16 February 2005. And what Kyoto Protocol mentions is whatever the developed nations are there, they are being considered as the entities which are responsible for the global warming, and they should reduce the emissions. And if they are not able to do, then they are allowed to buy the carbon offsets majorly from the developing nations under Clean Development Mechanism, which comes under Article 12 of Kyoto Protocol. So first commitment period was from 2008 to 12, under which 37 industrialized countries, majorly European nations, they were given target to reduce the emissions by 1990 level and reduce 5% more. USA, United States of America, hadn't signed and this hadn't ratified this Kyoto Protocol, and so during 2010-11, there was high pressure over USA to come under the Kyoto Protocol, but they were insisting, like India and China, they are also emitting what at the level what USA is emitting, so we should also be considered under the Kyoto Protocol. But as per the international treaty, developing nations, they were out of becoming the obligated entities, and so Kyoto Protocol commitment period 2 was always there in ambiguity to get implemented, although it had started from 2013 to 2020 and it had came into the force during November 2012 or October 2012, so almost only 3 months were there for the all industrialized nations to comply with this international treaty. Although there was a problem during 2011-12 that Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Japan, and Russia, they had withdrawn from the Kyoto Protocol because USA was not accepting this international treaty, and so the major industrialized nations came out from the Kyoto Protocol, and only the European Union was there. So, but European Union, under European Union Emission Trading Scheme, they had implemented the system to reduce the emission, and they were able to meet their commitment during second commitment period, which was reducing 17% of greenhouse gases of 1990 level. That means they have to reduce the emissions up to 1990 level and then come 17% down as compared to that level. So that was the journey of our carbon markets from 1997 to 2020. But now we are, as you know, as Joint Secretary Sir had already mentioned, that IPCC had published a report, and they had mentioned that 1 degree centigrade is already the temperature that we have, that the global temperature had been raised up to 1 degree centigrade. And so the Paris Agreement had been implemented or adopted during 2015, and it will come, and it's being enforced from 1 January 2021 from this calendar year. And what is the target that had been given, or what is the international treaty that had been accepted, is to cap 1.5 degree centigrade temperature rise. So 1 degree we have achieved, and 1.5 degree centigrade should be the capping. That means the Earth temperature should not rise more than 1.5 degree centigrade, and 2 degree centigrade should be the upper limit. Otherwise, the disastrous natural calamities frequency will increase at a higher pace. So to meet this Paris Agreement, all developed nations, almost all nations, they had submitted their pledge, maybe called as nationally determined contribution. And this nationally determined contribution, whatever they had submitted, so if till date they had not submitted, so 3.3 degrees centigrade. So whatever the energy that whatever the fossil fuels our globe is using, or industries or nations are using, so whatever the emission are going, which will do happen. So 3.3 degrees centigrade is the temperature rise, which is quite sure that we will do achieve this temperature rise. But whatsoever the nationally determined contributions or voluntary pledges that we have submitted, these pledges will do only help to reduce 0.3 degrees centigrade. So 3 degrees centigrade is a sure temperature that we are going to achieve. So the target for us to reduce or to implement policies, projects, adaptation of renewable energy, or doing energy efficiency projects, or putting more and more carbon sequestration projects, maybe at the technology level, which is not very much feasible as of now, but adapting more sustainable agricultural practices, or doing activities so that marine or sea can absorb more and more carbon dioxide, and then put more and more forests, which are also, these are all the activities which may call them nature-based solutions. So this is the best solution that we do have as of now. So all nations, they need to submit the revised national data contribution, so that globally we will be able to cap 1.5 degree centigrade temperature rise. So here comes our Paris Agreement. Just a minute, yeah. So here comes is the Paris Agreement, which had been signed during December 2015, and it came into the force during November 2016. And already 1.5 degrees centigrade and 2 degrees centigrade is the capping that we have discussed. For carbon markets, so almost 24 different articles are there under Paris Agreement. For carbon markets, Article 6 is the most important and critical article to get negotiated as soon as possible. So this article is quite similar to the Article 12 of Kyoto Protocol. Under Article 6, there is a Article 6.2, 6.4, 6.8, and all the sub-articles under Article 6 mentions about how international carbon markets will do get placed, because earlier during Kyoto Protocol there was not much complexity was there, but now there is a high number of complex issues are there, like all developing nations. Earlier developing nations were selling carbon credits, and majorly the developed nations were buying the same. But now all developing nations are also having their own target to reduce the emissions. So how they would be able to allow to sell the credits, and various other issues are there that I will to cover on the different the upcoming slides of mine. So this is the India's NDC, and nationally determined contribution NDC that India had submitted to United Nations during 2015. What we had submitted is to increase the share of non-fossil fuels to 40% of the total electricity generation capacity, reduce emission intensity of the economy by 33 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 level, and to create additional carbon sink like forests, trees, that it means of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through additional forest and tree cover. So this is the major target that India had submitted, apart from various minor interventions that Indian government will do to meet the Paris Agreement target. So in India, as we know, but just to cover and to let you know, MoFCC is the nodal agency to cover all these issues related to the climate change. And the interesting fact that you may observe, like earlier, the name of the ministry was Ministry of Environment and Forest, but now and climate change word had been added during last few years. So it shows how Indian government and as a nation, we are responsible, and we are very much focused to meet the climate change issues, to mitigate the climate change issues. Under Kyoto Protocol, there was a department called as National CDM Authority of India, NCADMA. It had got incorporated during 2003, and its major the projects are from its major role was to approve or give host country approval letter to the Indian projects, or the projects which are located in India, either being promoted by Indian company or by foreign company. But now during 2020, the government of India has constituted Apex Committee for the implementation of the Paris Agreement (AIPA) on 27 November 2020, and its main aim is to regulate carbon markets in India. So this is the new thing that is there. But now, as I already and the Joint Secretary Sir already mentioned that like COP26 is the very critical, very major conference which is going to happen there at Glasgow, United Kingdom, from 1st November to 12th November 2021. During this during next month it is going to happen, and the major issues for the nations, for the developing nation like us, the major issues which are there is related to what would be the definition of carbon credits, that is mitigation outcome that India will do consume for its own, for meeting its own target, and what would be the ITMOs, internationally traded or tradable mitigation outcome. So this definition is we are waiting for the clear definition about the same. Then corresponding adjustment, double counting is the issue which need to be resolved. Then how the registered projects under Kyoto Protocol would be migrated to the Paris Agreement, how this will happen. So then the next issue is what would be, how would we handle the issued credits or unissued credits, how the projects which are registered under voluntary carbon mechanisms or carbon credit programs or carbon credit standards like VC, Verified Carbon Standard, Gold Standard, or Global Carbon Council, how those projects should be considered or shall be considered under Paris Agreement, what would be the threshold date, so from the date of registration or date of crediting period or date of issuance, what would be that threshold date would be considered, requirement of letter of approval or host country approval would be there or not. Then the credits, ITMOs should be considered from the NDC sector or non-NDC sector, how the migration of the methodology, procedures, forms and formats will do happen. So various critical issues are there which need to be addressed during COP26, and it is very critical for all the nations. They are intended, they had shown, including USA. Since during Obama period, during 2005, USA had signed Paris Agreement, but Trump had withdrawn the same during 2017, and now Joe Biden, he had signed the Paris Agreement on the first day when he had joined the presidential seat there in USA. So the whole momentum, if you see, you would be able to hear about more and more about COP26, climate change, global warming, climate neutrality, climate positivity, net zero emissions. So these are all the issues which are all interconnected and very much important for human race to survive on Earth for a very long time without having any issues. At last, I want to cover this is the whole summary of the Paris Agreement, how the Indian government or any nation will do take its own position, then how individual organization like manufacturing or service organization will do take their own position. So if you see here the global target, Paris Agreement, the target is to cap the temperature rise by 1.5 degrees centigrade, and it should not be increased by 2 degrees centigrade. So to do this annually, we need to reduce to 52 to 58 tons of CO2 annually from the atmosphere, and international carbon markets would be the one of the solution to meet the targets. How Indian government will do take its position, we will do bring more regulations, maybe cap and trade mechanism, or putting penalties in the form of carbon tax, for example, or maybe implementation of emission trading scheme, putting domestic carbon offset scheme, maybe compliance or voluntary, and then it moves under cooperative approaches under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. So every 4 years we need to submit national reporting called as National MRV, Monitoring, Reporting and Verification Communication, and all nations will then submit this MRVs, and then international MRV will get summed under during the Stocktech meetings that will happen every 4 years to check either we are on the target or and more ambitious NDCs need to be declared if we are not able to meet the target at any national and at any particular nation level or as a globe, you can say. Then once the government will take this action, then each nation, manufacturing or service organizations, they need to do GHG accounting. They need to implement GHG mitigation projects. They need to buy carbon offsets if they are not able to meet the targets. And then every year they need to submit monitoring, reporting, verification reports. Then it comes to the national level. Then it comes to the international level. So this is how our industry, climate change industry or carbon market industry, is going to take its position in near future, maybe a year or two. Voluntary markets are always there. If you see during last 8 years, 9 years, when we had grown from very small organization to big organization, so the voluntary markets gets its position very well. So the nations, or you can say the industries which do not have any obligation to reduce the emissions, they are reducing it voluntarily. For example, in India, Zomato is there. They are buying carbon offsets to make its business operation carbon neutral. So whenever you will do open its app, then you would be able to see that they mention your delivery is carbon neutral. Similarly, if you visit Delhi Airport, Mumbai Airport, Hyderabad Airport, or Bangalore Airport, they are buying carbon offsets and making their business activity carbon neutral. Similarly, various other organizations within India and across the world, they are buying carbon offsets under voluntary carbon market. Then Article 6.2, 6.4 is there. After that, aviation industry, they had taken target to reduce the emission from 2021. So the scheme is called as CORSIA, and the CORSIA credits are you can say from in the international voluntary or international carbon markets. They are they have taken very good position. And then maritime industry, it's not being obligated by any of the nation as of now, but maybe by next 1 or 2 year or 3 year, they will be considered under the obligation, under voluntary pace or at the compliance pace. So this is the Paris Agreement implication for the corporates at the state government level and the central level government. And at the last, my 2 slides are covering about who are all the carbon market supply, who are all covered in the carbon market supply chain stakeholders. So one is the equipment manufacturer, which are the clean technology suppliers, seller of credits or project proponent, project owners, who are all the investors, project developers or advisory organizations like us. Third-party inspection companies are there who do audits. National DNAs are there, designated national authority. In India, it's NCDMA, or you can say AIPA. Then different standards are there, which takes their own position. Then traders are there, seller and aggregator, buyer and aggregator, buyer of credits. NGOs are very important for implementation of the projects at the rural part of the world. Registry operators are there, exchanges are there, or marketplaces are there, investors are there, and news media, magazines, portals, and at the last, multilateral organizations are there. Very much important, like World Bank. There are 2 activities called as preparedness for market readiness, although India is one of the beneficiary of that particular program. Preparedness of market readiness, and then preparedness of our market implementation, PMI. So ADB is also, it's playing its own position. GIZ is also doing various activities related to the implementation of climate change projects, policies, or other stuffs within India. So these are all different stakeholders related to our industry. So this is my last slide. Thank you very much for attending this webinar and listening looking at my slides patiently. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Manishji, and enabling us and enlightening us with the carbon credits and how the companies can make use of it, and giving us highlights on the carbon markets as well. So we'll take more questions in the question and answer session. I'll now invite our next speaker, Ms. Aparna Roy. She is the research lead, climate change and energy, ORF. Aparna, if can we see your video? Yeah. So over to you, Aparna.
Yes. Thank you so much, Vanita. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this webinar. It has been very insightful discussion so far, and hello everyone. Though Vanita has introduced me, but I'm Aparna Roy. I lead the Climate Change and Energy Program at the Center for New Economic Diplomacy Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi. And I'd like to speak today on the Youth for Climate Change driving sustainability through impact at scale. To do justice to the title, I would rather start with a line from Greta Thunberg, the youth climate icon's word at the recent Youth for Climate Change pre-COP26 event, that our hopes and dreams die in their empty words and promises. She went on to acknowledge that the constructive dialogues are important, but urges the world to consider where 30-odd years of constructive dialogues and climate change has led us. A recent study led by University of Bath found that 75% of young people surveyed believe that in the future it is frightening because of climate change, and 65% agreed with the statement that governments are miserably failing young people. It is rather easy, though, to wish away such voices of youth by labeling them as a result of youthful exuberance or directionless angst, or even worse, a motivated propaganda. It is a commonality to paint the calls for immediate action, particularly by youth activists, as an extreme demand which fails to account for the maturity required to deal with challenges in a balanced way. To burst this myth that youthfulness and maturity are opposites, let's go through some critical elements for the 7-odd minute long speech and bring some perspective as to how Youth for Climate Change can actually drive sustainability by activating actions at scale. And Thunberg's speech is just a reflection of how thousands of climate activists are contributing and echoing the voice of youth as a collective. The speech begins by stating that climate change is not merely a crisis, it is an opportunity that can deliver a win-win for everyone. Now, this sentiment entails the spirit of taking everyone along and building a coalition towards a common threat and capitalizing on the opportunities of building back better. The speech further recognizes the need for constructive dialogue, but points to a very, constructive dialogue, but points to a very significant argument that such dialogues have not led us anywhere so far. This is as mature as an approach as it can get. Consider the dialogues and deliberations that have gone into making our economies more inclusive, our laws more efficient, our state machinery more compassionate and people-friendly. The metric of development and change in public policy is welfare of the last person in the queue. On one of these indicators, it can be confidently constructed that most precarious of people have gained substantially and have an improved quality of life. There are reports, journalistic stories to the contrary, and just general observation anecdote which proves that there is a lot of ground that is yet to be covered. This sentiment also points towards the fault lines in the way such dialogues have been constructed and conducted so far. If it appears to people being impacted by decisions of such dialogues that not much action has happened on the ground so far, and perhaps the political leaders are not walking the talk, then there is something structurally wrong with the system of social dialogue. This goes true for climate deliberations as well. For instance, building back better becomes a prominent rhetoric when it comes to political leaders' stance on the intersection of climate change and COVID pandemic. However, the celebration of return to normalcy and business as usual is a testimony to the hollowness of such rhetoric. On the contrary, youth are indeed translating their talk into action. Be it the story of Green Hope Foundation, which works in remote areas of Bangladesh to conserve mangroves and offer livelihood or food security solutions to the vulnerable population, or example of Kosiloti Neati, 17, who is the UNICEF climate activist from Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, working tirelessly on spreading awareness around the impact of climate change among youth community members. There are concrete and visible action being taken by climate activists. Then there are stories where people have taken to their skills and jobs to carry forward the momentum on climate change, ranging from young photographers in Dominican Republic to people setting solar batteries from their family-run shops in Uganda. Her speech then delves into the core idea behind rallying for climate action. As per Thunberg, the first thing that comes to mind when she hears climate change is jobs. Most countries' pledges and climate goals are centered around net zero targets, reducing emissions, increasing renewable power generation, infusing climate resilience in economic sectors, and other similar announcements. Jobs, particularly green jobs, become an aftermath or some kind of an outcome of this green transition. This is similar to the problem of inclusive and equitable economic growth. Welfare of workers at the bottom of the pyramid has become an outcome of economic growth and not an enabler. This secondary priority accorded to jobs, people's welfare and quality of life is a dangerous development which takes the narrative away from its core theme. In reiterating that climate transition is about jobs and justice, Thunberg made the point loud and clear. This is a significant attribute which is common around messaging of Generation Z of climate activists is that it is not like conventional campaigns to save polar bears or rainforests. This new age of environmentalism is about climate justice and welfare of the most vulnerable group. This ought to make them the most mature group of people advocating for climate action. Youth activists are campaigning and working toward climate adaptation, providing livelihood solutions, helping people cope with disasters and become more resilient ecologically and economically. And these are concrete actions far away from the plans, policy documents, guidelines that also limited countries have come out with for just transitions in the climate space. As per Thunberg, the crisis is not merely a climate crisis, but is a manifestation of larger social crisis, inequality crisis that dates back to colonialism and beyond. To this effect, the argument is that the belief that some people's life is worth more than others is a fundamental issue which amplifies and sustains the adverse impact of ongoing climate crisis. And without confronting such deeply rooted issue, the situation will not change. Now, the speech also takes a calculated jibe on the media. Thunberg says that all this while, the attention of the media has been on what the political leaders say they will do for instance of what they were actually going to do. This signifies the fragility in ensuring an institutionalized accountability of policies and policymakers towards the people they govern, as it relates an inherent power dynamic where people are stigmatized and rigidly placed as the receivers of policies and not necessarily equal creators of them, which should be the case given the virtues of democracy and indispensable for good governance in the 21st century. The speech mentions a crucial takeaway for all its researchers of present times, especially social science researchers and public policy professionals. She mentions that while the political leaders say they want solutions, they fail to understand that it is futile to look for solutions when one doesn't understand the problem completely. And an ill-informed or uninformed approach to policymaking has resulted in a scenario where policies have become more about political optics than actual action on ground, with an unfortunate acceptance of the fact that implementation level challenges are given and hence inaction is justified to some extent. This needs to change. The speech again alludes to the importance of equity in all the discourses around climate change. Thunberg says that as long as we ignore equity and resort to clever accounting as one of the more important ways of reducing emissions, it will not yield an action. This is reflected in the genuine concerns around greenwashing by investors and green capitalism that climate actions are becoming one with. While walk the talk is the need of the hour, it is unfortunate that political leaders are claiming to be trying and taking actions to address climate change while allowing for coal mining to flourish, granting new oil licenses, and increasing coal-fired power generation capacities, the speech highlights. In an ever-changing time, the want of climate change requires solutions to keep up with the pace at which things are changing. This includes passion, commitment, values, belief, planning, conducting oneself, undertaking actions, having the willpower to introspect and reflect on one's shortcomings, speaking the truth, and working for the welfare of others. The track record of governments or authorities in such metric is arguably poor, but it is youth that has risen to the need of the hour and showcased excellent dedication towards doing the things right. Impact at scale will come from understanding what is the bottleneck to impact in the first place. Organizing scattered action, creating a social movement, building networks, and marching forward in a collective way. Something that the youth of today is doing on climate and other fronts. The society, polity, and economic stakeholders can further facilitate this movement for giving a better future to the next generation. They must recognize that being youth is not a matter of age, but a matter of having an ideology which is premised on scientific temperament, questioning nature, and hope for creating a better future for the society at large. A top-down approach of facilitating youth in climate dialogue by imparting education or building capabilities will only yield results to a certain extent and subsequently fall in the same vicious trap that other good-meaning initiatives have fallen over the past of inaction and futility. The need of the hour is to infuse and adopt a bottom-up approach where the policymakers, economic stakeholders, and the so-called adults of the world learn to listen and listen to learn from the youth. That's the key to impact at scale. To wrap up, as Thunberg says, we cannot let people in power decide what the hope is. Hope is not passive. Hope is telling the truth. Hope is taking action. And hope always comes from people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Aparna Roy, for your insightful speech. I mean, indeed, it is really that we walk the talk and take our collective efforts and make it into an action, and that is the need of the hour. Thank you so much. We'll come back to you in the question and answer sessions. I'll now request Mr. Varun Pava and, for his presentation.
Sure, Vinitaji. I would request for sharing rights for my presentation.
Yes. I think you must have the rights, Varunji. You can share your presentation.
I can't click on the share tab. It's showing I don't have the rights.
Just a second.
Sure.
Just ask the IT team.
The problem is whether it is non-tech and whether it is tech. Now, that will tell you.
You can share right now. The IT team has enabled you.
Be able to address that area of downwards. So we have system सीधे जॉइन करा दो and you if you have many things, please ask them to go through it. These are now these are my jobs. These are my categories. So you could be a developer, you could be a architect, you could be a machine learning expert. So by role or by years of experience, this content which is foundational, advanced, and you can choose from this. So this is something which is free. This is something which is self-paced. This is something which is online.
And we can see your presentation.
You can start website. So while we have a website, we also understand the new age guys, because there'll be old generation and the new generation as well. They are more used to consuming. Hello. Sorry, so we have what we call a
Vinitaji, if you can hear me, I think the PhD host is speaking really.
Also disseminate training. So think about how
IT team, if you could enable Mr. Varun Pava to share his screen, we can see PhD-CCI has booked on the speaking.
And we have what we call an AWS Power Hour, where we talk about how to deploy basic services and so on. Develop software, you can
I don't know if you can hear me, but the PhD.
This is what I'm telling the IT team. Paramjit ji.
On Twitch.
Yes, we can see
We
Varun
also
Pava is
experience augmenting the social channels, the website, and now we kind of bring
again
it
going
forward.
to PhD CCI.
Also really
Paramjit ji is again going to PhD
who
CCI as
really want to buy
speaker.
these because the online material is
You
not
could mute
for them.
yourself and
Do
give
lot of
rights to Varun Pava ji.
instructor-led classes. We actually is a material that is designed by AWS experts. We have 3-day training classes. These are intense 8-hour day kind of classwork. People get hands-on lab experience.
Paramjit ji.
Instructor then is another model for us. So we have to give you the hands-on experience. We have AWS Jam, which is nothing else where we, it's a team interactive learning environment where we give you some specific use statement.
All right. Can you hear me, Vinita ji? Should I start?
Ji. Yes, Varun ji, now you're the speaker.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'll
Sorry
take.
for the
That's fine. That's fine. So I'll start my presentation with 4 interesting slides and try to connect particularly the building sector and this whole talk about carbon emissions. To start and correlate with the theme today, that how the next gen can be a contributor to the whole sustainability movement, is what I'll attempt to answer also towards the end, and how we can play a role in this whole climate change movement as well. So just to give you some facts right now, amongst all carbon emissions, which includes the industry and transportation, the building sector, which includes mostly the residential sector, commercial sector, and part of the industrial sector as well, 28% of all carbon emissions comes from the running of the building, which would include aspects like electricity consumption. 11% comes through the use of material and the intrinsic carbon that is so-called associated with the construction or making of these building materials for construction. So that is a very, very significant part. In fact, the larger part of the whole carbon emission can be contributed to the building sector. Almost 2/3 of the global existing buildings are going to be in existence for the next 20 years. And we have to be conscious about the fact that our carbon goals of the Paris agreements of just capping it at 1.5 degrees Celsius target, one will have to address the existing buildings and their carbon footprint and the carbon emissions that they're having. So that is something which cannot be neglected, as what we have already built as a human race across the planet till date. Going forward, the global building footprint is expected to double in the next 40 years. So we're going to be building approximately 2.4 trillion square feet of new floor area globally. This is equivalent to adding a New York City every month for the next 40 years. So that's the quantum of construction that is going to take place. So it's extremely important that we look at this particular segment from a point of view of zero emissions and what we can do to limit the carbon footprint here. Another very interesting slide, just 3 materials, concrete, steel, and aluminum, are responsible for 23% of the total global emissions. That is the fact that how we get to these materials from the raw material. And a large part, as you can see, is consumed in the building industry. So these are high impact material items if one can attack, and keeping in mind the whole global building scenario. So obviously the theme of everyone is green. everyone's talking this new language, green. We use words interchangeably such as global warming, climate change, clean tech, carbon credits, sustainability. But another buzzword which is going around is sustainable or green buildings. So what is a green building? It's a holistic approach to look at any residential waste footprint, conservation resources, and also lower environment. It sort of gets tied in the whole sustainable environment. The occupant's health is also given a lot of importance in this whole concept. So fundamentally, what do we want to go green, or particularly green? So cost savings, there are advantages in the long run of multiple green. You end up with a healthier workspace or living space. There's a direct correlation with the increased population. Also, is promoting green to various Indian state government. Who are the stakeholders in this? All building occupants to start with, whether you're the owner or an occupant. I think everybody can play a role in influencing either an existing building that you occupy or a future building that you will occupy. Architects play a very important role. Designers and consultants of mechanical, electrical, plumbing sections of green building play extremely important role. All developers. There are various developers within India who have chosen to declare publicly that they will build only green. Also ties in with city planners as well. So how does one go? It's easy to loosely use the term green buildings, but today there are frameworks which are available which enable you to objectively design and build, and during the life cycle of the building, measure what your footprint, carbon footprint and energy footprint is. So just to give you an example, some of the green building certification programs that are popular in India, there is something called IGBC. There is a USGBC LEED, which is popular globally. There is a GEM program, GEM program, ASSOCHAM. TERI has a very strong Griha program. You have the ECBC course. So all of these are essentially frameworks. You could choose to go with one or multiple, but these provide a framework to any owner, designer, to objectively measure what they're building as a footprint, and also during the life cycle of the program. So just to give you an example, what these would cover, just as a macro level, these cover all aspects, including the choice of selection of the site. So it includes the water consumption, water efficiency, the energy in atmosphere, the material that you're using. It encourages sourcing of local materials, and it awards you points for every aspect that you certify or exceed. Indoor environmental quality gets a very, very high rating in this. And also innovation and design processes to cut down energy footprints gets rewarded. So based on, so this is just one example of the LEED certification program. So based on what you're aiming for, you can get points. And based on those points, you get certified. You can get a silver rating, you can get a gold rating, you can get a platinum rating. And interestingly, you can go beyond platinum. And what now we are referring to as buildings as net zero buildings. Net zero buildings are buildings which are totally self-sustainable. They could be potentially off the grid as well. In fact, you are now even talking about net positive buildings, which would generate their own energy and also even feedback to the grid. So again, the point here being that there is a very, very well-established framework available that if you choose to go down this path. And India today, interestingly, from a square footage point of view of new build, is one of the top 3 or 5 countries globally which is building green. So if I take away, take all the certification programs, and all of them are good in various respects, we are actually leading the green building movements in many ways globally after North America. So this is what I gave you as an example as to what you could be scoring points under. So to break it down further, if you're looking at energy consumption of building, a large part of building energy consumption, particularly our Indian climates, is air conditioning loads. In fact, area lighting is just a fraction of it. And if I include ventilation, this number goes above 60%. So overall picture, the largest carbon emitters globally is the building sector, and within that, the largest contributor is your air conditioning system. So even by focusing on the low-hanging fruit, which is air conditioning in buildings, you can do a lot to cut down the energy footprint. Also, more at a macro level, the life cycle cost of an air conditioning system, the capital expenditure may be only 10%, but the operating cost throughout the life cycle of air conditioning equipment, whether it's 15 to 20 years, is almost 90% of the cost. So just a section on indoor environmental quality. We are all familiar with indoor air quality, which is getting a lot of importance, but indoor environmental quality goes beyond air quality. It deals with lighting, thermal conditions, also ergonomics, and also the choice of material that we're using within the space. So we are wanting to use materials, paints, which are low on VOC. And this is just an example. So we as a company are into green air conditioning as one of our divisions. And also we participate from India in various green building projects globally. But just to highlight that this is something which is within reach of everyone. This is something where all of us can contribute, whether it's an existing building. We can invite consultants who are specialized in this field, who will come in and do the existing energy footprint and recommend strategies. There are escrow companies which would do that. They would even do the investment. But if you are building new, whether it's a residential or commercial, this is something which we all can do. This is a new factory that we built in Manesar, and I was in the process of doing the certificate. And the time it took was just extra few days. The cost we have probably covered has not been years, but a few months. So whatever you do is coming back on two fronts. One, it's financially feasible and your ROIs are very attractive, and yet you're also contributing to the whole sustainability movement. So various things with respect to even using the terrace space for solar PV panels, which are running the whole air conditioning system. And we are actually supplying back to the grid, even though we are a factory, and the factory itself is green certified. So there are various products which are available if you do choose to build green, and also on the air conditioning side. So this was just an introduction. Conclusions. One, the realization that one can build green, working closely with the architect and consulting engineer. This can make so much of a difference, such as example being the orientation of the building, the use and choice of resources, local resources, you're cutting down the footprint. Automation, AI and building management systems can cut down your energy footprints drastically in buildings. And it's definitely the need of the hour, and it's all in our control. So, thank you.
Thank you, Varunji, for your wonderful presentation and how you, as your company, Power Group, is contributing and building sustainable solutions, and how the audience and the attendees can also connect with you for greener buildings and move ahead. So we'll come back to we'll take the question answers now. Are there any questions from the participants? There are a few in the chat box that I'll read later. In case anybody would like to question, we can tell the IT team to enable them to speak. Subhiji, you'd like to ask any question from any of the panelists? So we have one question from Mr. Rahul Kumar. I would request Mr. Sadanand Tiwari, he is from Enking International, to take it up. How are the NDCs developed? And the another question is also related to the carbon markets. How after COP26, how do you anticipate about the voluntary carbon market in terms of number? If you would like to take up that question, Mr. Sadanand Tiwari.
Yeah, hi Vinita. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, so with regards to the question that I got from Mr. B. Rahul Kumar, it says that how are the NDCs developed? So, well, it's the country's mitigating goals, okay, which all countries are obliged to, those who have signed Paris Agreement, they have to come up with this NDCs, okay. So there is a very thin line, which because you see all the countries are different in terms of circumstances or resources. So for a developed country, the NDCs could be more aggressive, whereas for the developing countries, the NDCs could be a little bit more on a lenient way. So, but there is but what in the Paris Agreement is clearly mentioned that the guideline says that for a developed country, it should undertake the economy-wide absolute emission reduction targets. While when you are talking about a developing countries like India, let's say, or other Southeast Asian countries, so the NDC should be considered according to the emissions per unit of GDP. So that is how even for Indian NDCs, if you look that we are talking about the 40% should be there should be less in the fossil fuels and all, right? So it's all considered according to the GDP and the population that India has. That's how the NDCs of each countries are differed. You cannot compare any NDCs with each country that's similar. It's not same. It's all different from each and every country. I have one more question. I think.
That's from Mr. Abhishek Shrivastava on the
Abhishek,
voluntary. Yes.
yeah, it's about COP26. What do you anticipate about the voluntary carbon market in terms of number? Well, in terms of voluntary carbon market, the results are very positive. I mean, what we are anticipating right now, and we have seen, considering the what 2021 has shown us that it says that by and this numbers that I'm going to throw right now, it's not from us. It's basically task force of scaling voluntary carbon market. There is a unit which is prepared, which has been organized, and it's lots of big consulting firms like McKinsey are the one who are leading and part of this voluntary carbon market scheme, this task force, sorry. And they are saying that by 2030 we can estimate that the total market for this voluntary carbon market could grow to $40 billion easily. That's the maximum that's the maximum they are going. And in terms of volume, if I talk about right now, I mean, they're saying that by 2030 we can anticipate somewhere around 2 gigatons of CO2, by 2030. And if I talk about 2021, only by January itself, we are seeing that around 3,110 million of metric tons of CO2 was issued from all the voluntary schemes I'm talking about. Like you talk about the Vera, that is the VCS body, then the gold standard, and the American registry. So they have already contributed around 3,110 metric tons of CO2 emissions. I mean, the carbon credits were issued. So we can anticipate that the market is going to go high. There is nothing looking back. I mean, but yes, we'll get more clarity after COP26. That is for sure.
There is another question for you in the chat box. You have to take up
Yeah,
that.
how, Mr. Ramana, how dependent EKI's business is on the outcome of COP26? Well, that's a very good question. Well, with regards to COP26 and EKI's business, yes, it is because since we are part of this carbon credit sphere, and in COP26, all the discussion and all the eyes, all ears will be on this negotiation that is going to happen on the Article 6.2, right? So we are when considering the COP26, and our businesses is that the compliance market, like the CDM, is something that we are looking forward, because we are not getting more clarity on what is going to happen with the projects which are already registered in CDM. However, in terms of voluntary market, as I already mentioned about the numbers, we have seen a very, the market is very good for us, because more countries will come up with more aggressive NDCs. They will be having some carbon taxes, a lot of now they will be coming up with some new regulations, and also the governments are taking things seriously now. And after this COP26, we are pretty much sure that the voluntary carbon market is going to show us a very good result, and we are going to get more clarity on in terms of the compliance carbon market.
I think there are no more questions. Any questions from the audience? From Mr. Sadanand Tiwari or any of our panelists? Mr. Varun Pava is also there. I guess there are not any more questions which needs to be answered, but we would like to say that all our speakers are doing commendable work in the field of sustainability, and we've tried to give a perspective of how you can align these fields and connect with them and make your business more sustainable in terms of carbon credits, carbon market, and reaching towards reducing carbon emissions, really making more greener buildings, and how as a young and industry we can reach towards this goal. So with this, I would like to conclude our session for the day and with a formal vote of thanks to all our eminent speakers, Shri Jigme Takpaji, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Mr. Saket Dalmia, Senior Vice President, PhD CCI, Ms. Surbi Gupta, Chair, YBLF, Mr. Manish Tapkara, Managing Director, Enking International, Mr. Sadanand Tiwari, Enking International, Ms. Aparna Roy, Research Lead, Climate Change and Energy ORF, Mr. Varun Pawar, President DRI Power Group, for taking out their time. And it is my privilege to extend a formal vote of thanks to all our eminent speakers for this wonderful interaction and how, sharing the valuable insights, how we can move towards sustainability and a better future. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone in the attendees. And we thank our event sponsor, Enking International, for making on this platform and giving us how the companies can take benefit of carbon credits. And if anyone has they've already given their connection, how to connect with them. And people can write to us also in case anyone wants to connect with them. And our online partner, IndianBureaucracy.com, YBLF annual sponsors, Artify, Bry Air Asia Private Limited, Gulshan Polyols Limited, Instinct Infra and Power Limited, and Multani Pharmaceuticals Limited for supporting the annual activities of YBLF. With these words, I close today's session. Thank you all once again for joining the session today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very
So
much.
would you like to say something in the end to all our speakers?
I'm just saying thank you. Thank you everyone for gathering here and giving us your afternoon, and really enjoyed the sessions. Thank you so much, speakers.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Stay safe.
much.
Thank you, Vinita.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Varunji. Thank you, Surbiji. Thank you, sir. We can see you window, Jigme Takpaji, sir. Thank you so much if you're listening to us. Thank you, Saketji.